Good. All right, guys. Dual Coast Podcast Week 3. How's everybody doing today? January 21st, Tuesday morning. Russ, how you feeling?
Oh man, I'm so thankful that I am indoors today. And the reason is because I traveled to Pittsburgh yesterday, and last night it got down to this. It got down to 2 degrees, and overnight they were saying it was in the minus. But I was in this room, man. I was nice and toasty.
Yes.
So, but man, you look out the window and you just shiver. It's just so cold.
It's cold in the Northeast, man. I know how you feel in New York.
God.
I get it.
I
get
think, I left 63 degrees. I mean, we've had no rain for a while, and it's been cool at night. I'll say cool because this is cold. That's cool.
That's right.
But it's cool at night, and but the days are beautiful out on the beach playing beach volleyball.
Sure.
And, hanging with friends, getting some walks in. So yeah, it's amazing. What about you?
Yeah, guys, today Dual Coast will be the only day probably where we're on one coast. Doesn't happen too often.
It's One Coast Podcast, baby.
One Coast Podcast today. But everything's going good, man. Just gearing up for today. We had a great conversation last week with Frank Seppi. If you guys missed it, I highly recommend checking that out on our Spotify, on our YouTube, wherever you guys want to check it out. Frank was great. We had great conversation. He was a motivator, innovator. He gave some great tips, I think, for the gym, gave some great tips just about life in general, in my opinion. He touched a little bit on his nutrition, and he touched a little bit on his workouts. He really was great. Russ, what do you think? What'd you think about Frank?
I was really impressed. And I think when you go back and you look at the clips, right. Yeah. And you watch the podcast, I'm so enthralled by the fact of what he does.
Sure.
His motivation, his encouragement to people.
Yeah.
He speaks so well, and obviously he looks good, Yeah. So I was just really impressed by not only that, but how down to earth he was. Right.
He was very down to earth, without a doubt.
I personally have never had a conversation with him.
Sure.
I've only just seen his videos and stuff like this, but this he's elevated, man. Like, he does a lot.
He's big.
People, and a lot of people look up to him.
Without a doubt.
So, he's a new friend.
And without a doubt.
Yeah. And I know that you live close, and I know that you've got some things, on the cusp, but I was really motivated after last week, and I'm excited about him, but I'm also excited about our relationship and for the people that are now watching Dual Coast.
Totally agree. Frank brought us some following and stuff like that. And a lot of people started commenting on a lot of our stuff and checking us out and everything like that. And Frank really brought some attention to us, and it was great. He's all around, he's very well connected in the fitness world, even the mental health industry, honestly, because a lot of people, look up to him as an innovator, a motivator. Frank touched on some mental health also about working out and everything like that in our last episode. He was great, honestly. we're definitely gonna stay in touch with him. Dual Coast wise, just me, specifically, sometimes I want to get over there, work out with Frank.
That'll be entertaining.
That should be entertaining. Yeah. He'll have to drop the weight a little bit, Russ. Maybe to hang out with him, but it's okay. We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
Are you gonna lighten that load up when it comes to your turn?
I'm gonna have to. I think I might have to. Hopefully not too much, but I think I might have to.
Oh my gosh. You and I were yapping yesterday, because there was that one video that Frank posted, right? And he's pulling it into his chest right here, and I spouted out to Dan. I was like, yeah, I do that with 1 or 2 fingers.
1 or 2 fingers. Yeah.
It's gotta have some.
Frank's putting everything he's got into it. Russ does it with 1 finger.
But he's awesome. Frank is amazing, and I'm looking. We'll probably have him back on, and
I truly think we're going to have Frank back on, guys, at some point. He was great all around, and a stellar guest, honestly, to kick off everything with, because obviously we're a newer podcast, and Frank was our first guest, as most of you know. Definitely would love to have him back on one day. He's great all around, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So tell us what's going on in our world right now.
Yeah. So we got a lot going on. As far as media, as far as the inauguration yesterday, a lot of what me and Russ actually would say is a little bit of distraction, honestly. So, guys, today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about distraction and how to stay focused on your goals and how to progress. We had the inauguration yesterday, and a lot of people, were tuning in and stuff like that. Not to say you shouldn't by any means. But there's a lot of distraction that goes on in the media. There's a lot of things that we don't focus on when we're trying to get to our goals. So, it's great to stay up on current events. It's great to, be up on the news, of course, but a lot of that turns into a distraction at some point and regresses you from your goals. So, being on the phone, being on the computer, being on the TV and everything like that, a lot of times that works in a negative factor. So it's great to stay up on current events. It's great to stay up on a lot of fitness tips, don't get me wrong, and things of that nature, but try not to let it distract you to such a high degree where it causes you to regress from your fitness goals, from your mental health goals. A lot of times the news and everything can weigh in on your mental health also. So all the negative factors that the news kind of puts out, that TikTok maybe puts out, X, Instagram, everything. Sometimes a lot of negative connotations, that stuff, and it weighs on people's mental health in an aspect that does not allow you to progress from both physical and mental aspects. Russ, what do you think about that?
100%. I think, we can see the change is happening.
Yes.
It has happened, but the thing about it is like, besides that, there's a lot of things that go on around us. Right.
Sure.
And I think what people have to understand is that a lot of these things are out of your control. Yes, we can vote and everything, but I'm talking about in daily life.
Sure.
Everything goes around us. Things can be out of our control, and things are out of our control. But what is in your world, the things that you can do for yourself,
right?
That's what's most important, right? And so when we talk about the mental and physical aspect of what we can control, right? And I was just talking to a guy, he's been studying, 20 years of mental health just this last week.
Sure.
And when I was talking with him, I was like, he's asking me, he's like, what do you do, Russ? Like, how do you help your mental aspect? And I said, it's very simple, Mike. I said, for me, it's very simple because, I try to motivate and I try to encourage, I wrote books, on encouraging kids and families to get outside and do activities together. Yes. And people really, I think, don't really comprehend the importance of what fresh air is all about.
Yeah.
What sun rays, the vitamin D, what it's all about and what it does to our bodies. I mean,
sure.
Think about it. If you're inside, like right now, if I was locked into this place, right? And I was in here, and after a period of time, or if you live in the Northwest where it rains all the time and it's gloomy, but the fact is that you got to get outside. And there's a story, Dan. I went up to visit a friend. This was years ago.
Right.
He lived in Eugene, Oregon, and it rained cats and dogs all weekend long. And he's like, "Hey, Russ, you want to go out and throw the football?" I'm like, Scott. I go, dude, it is pouring rain. He goes, if we wait for the rain to stop, we'll never going to go outside.
We'll never go outside.
Yeah. And you know what we did? We threw on the gear. We went out to this park and it's dumping rain and we're out there, we're tossing the football.
That's it.
It was so much fun.
That's
right?
Awesome.
So it's releasing and people understand, even if it is raining or it's cold, if it's cold, you could take just a short walk, right?
Sure.
Back inside.
Right.
But you can exercise in your room, but it's so important when you have the opportunity to get out because that fresh air, it does wonders to
Absolutely.
us. And the movement of our body, it does wonders for our mind. And so when you relate mental and physical wellness, think about what you can do outside physically that's going to address the mental.
Yep. Totally agree with that. Yeah, that's plays a big proponent, guys. And honestly, just to touch back on something that we actually touched on episode 1, I believe it was, is goal setting. So from a goal setting standpoint, yes, it's cold out. Yes, in the Northeast, obviously, if you live other places, but me and Russ today, it's cold outside. Goal setting wise, I think a lot of people overshoot those goals and a lot of people try to focus on too much into the future. I think a lot of goal setting has to do with, and this tip plays off the distraction a little bit, is that it should be in the short term to some degree.
Yes.
You should have your short-term goals, your midterm goals, and your long-term goals. I think a lot of the short-term stuff should be considered first, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So you want to just get outside a little bit, take that first couple of steps, then maybe get into, let's say you get into yoga, let's say you get into some sort of fitness routine or something like that. Concentrate on the short term first, and then progress to the long term goals. And I think a lot of that, plays in as far as a mental health standpoint, a physical health standpoint. I think a lot of those goals should be considered initially first, where you kind of get out there, take that first step. And I think that will help you from a mental drive aspect.
Yes.
You know what I mean, Russ? So like
totally.
somebody gets out and they get in that mental aspect where they can say, okay, I can do this. I could do this. And then mentally you progress further and further and further. And then you could start setting those longer term goals once you get that mental drive going.
Yes.
Because if you're not in the correct mental state to do so, I think you're going to regress and regress and regress as opposed to progress.
100%. I totally agree with that because, and you've said it several times, take the first step.
Right.
Right. So when you do that short-term goal, think about the first step. What is that first step? And what does it look like for you?
Yeah.
Right. Is it signing up for a gym membership? Is it going outside for a walk? Is it taking your family outdoors and doing something active? What is that first step? Identify. Right. And then get in the mindset. I think this is where people struggle, is getting in the mindset that it becomes a routine, just like you said, Dan, a routine. Right. Because I think that when you do it, guess what? It becomes, you become hungry for it. Sure. You desire it. You look forward to it. And so if you have a certain time that you work out, that you're going to work out, for me, that time is in the afternoon from like 3:30 to 5:30. That's my great window where I feel good. I'm done with my workday, and now I can get out and do something and really physically get after it. And I'm hungry for it.
Yes.
Like, I am so adamant about my time, and I get locked in, and I get that sweat, and I get that energy rush, and I get the heart rate up. Those are the things. But taking that first step is so important in the short term for goal setting, and it's build from there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It should be simplistic steps, I think, guys, at first. You want to take simplistic steps. Yeah. So, like, it doesn't even have to be in a physical or aspect and stuff like that. I'm a big proponent, and Russ knows this all the time, and he says it to me all the time. I'm a big proponent of put yourself in the room. Yes. I say that all the time, and Russ still says it back to me all the time. So I'm a big proponent of just put yourself in the room. And that can be like, from a matter of just mental aspect, that can be from a matter of physical aspect or anything. Put yourself in the gym, put yourself in the boardroom, whatever it is. You want to put yourself in situations, and this, in my opinion, I think this works very well, where you're slightly uncomfortable.
Yes.
You don't always want to be in your comfort zone. You have to get out of your comfort zone, guys, to progress to any degree, in my opinion. Maybe you're used to going to the gym, and Frank touched on this last week, actually, from this standpoint. Frank goes to the gym all the time, the same gym. He's been going to it for 30 years, I'm sure. He talked about a hot yoga studio that he passed all the time, and he would not go in there because he felt uncomfortable. Frank Seppi felt uncomfortable. So
imagine that, right?
Imagine that, right? Exactly. and I understand that a lot of people probably feel uncomfortable from that aspect because they're not used to that setting and stuff like that. So I think that's a huge thing in goal setting, is you have to step outside your comfort zone to some degree also.
Yes.
So if it's in the short term, that's fine. If it's in the long term, that's fine too, I think, getting out of your comfort zone. But I think somewhere along the line, guys, you have to step out of it a little bit. Put yourself into that yoga class, maybe into that different gym, maybe into the different aspect of fitness that you're not used to. Yeah. I myself is sometimes guilty and stuff like that. I weight train all the time, but I don't really, I'm not into the yoga. But now that certain people have told me the different attributes that it brings to you and the fitness aspect and stuff like that, I'm going to get into those different things, and I'm going to take myself out of my comfort zone, which is lifting weights and in the gym and stuff like that. I'm going to start running a little bit more because those are not things that I typically do. I typically jump rope, I lift weights and stuff like that. So I'm going to take myself out of my comfort zone to try to progress. And I think getting out of your comfort zone is something you have to do in order to mentally and physically keep progressing down the line. Russ, you agree with that?
Yeah. When you think about uncomfortable, what is it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's doing something that doesn't feel normal.
Sure.
Right? It affects you. It affects you up here, upstairs, sure. Right? So right. If you're going to, or I, or we are going to do something uncomfortable, it's getting out and putting us into a position to where it's like, this doesn't feel right. It feels weird. It feels strange. but that's a good place.
That's a good place.
Right? It's a good place. And so we encourage you, Dan and I encourage you, and this is an encouragement to ourselves, is like, get uncomfortable and work through that.
Yes.
Right? Because it's only going to benefit yourself. And so put yourself in the room and get uncomfortable,
right?
And take that first step, goal set, and see what happens. I think, I would love to hear from you guys. I would love to hear from you guys. Like, where are you uncomfortable? What is it that you got to move through? What is the hang up in your life right now that's not allowing you to take that first step?
Right. What's stopping you guys? What's stopping you from getting out there, taking that first step? This podcast actually wouldn't exist if I didn't put myself in the room one day with Russ.
That's it.
So putting yourself out there and just getting uncomfortable to any degree will allow you guys to progress. And trust me, you'll feel great about it afterwards. You're going to be uncomfortable at first, of course, like we just said, but once you gain comfort in that regard, you're going to progress. Trust me. That's the best thing to do. Just make yourself uncomfortable to any degree. Put yourself in the Pilates class, give it a shot. Put yourself in the yoga class, give that a shot. And then you can see what kind of fits you, see what kind of fits your role as far as your fitness goals. A lot of people are like, oh, I got to be in the gym. I got to be lifting weights. That's not true. Russ loves to work out in his garage. He looks at the ocean. It depends on what your goal is, what your setting is, where you are, things like that. It's a matter of how you progress from there. It's a matter of how you take that first step initially. You want to walk in there, you want to do this, this, and this. Okay, that's great. Just put yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone and then see where it takes you. That's my opinion on that. Just have to be out of your comfort zone.
Well, and out of your comfort zone, and
it's different.
It's something. It just came up this morning on a friend of mine's post, Jasmine, and I shared it with you this morning, Dan, and I wanted to share it today with you guys because when we talk about uncomfortable, a lot of people doubt themselves, right?
Sure. Yes.
And going back to week 1 of this podcast, my word for this year is certainty, right? Yes. And I came across this post from my friend Jasmine this morning. I'd love to share with you guys. It's from Steve Jobs. And he says, you're going to die someday. Let that sink in. Every minute you waste doubting yourself, procrastinating, or playing it safe is time you'll never get back. The world doesn't need mediocrity, right? Mediocre ideas, or people afraid to push the boundaries. If you're not ready to sacrifice comfort and embrace obsession, you're wasting your potential. Greatness doesn't come from playing nice. It comes from relentless focus on what matters.
Yes.
And so for me, that is confirmation of my word. That is confirmation of what we need to tell you today, right? Don't play it safe. Get out. Don't waste time. Don't doubt yourself. Be certain about it.
That's
and
exactly right.
Get yourself uncomfortable, and let's move that dial to the next stage of your life.
Love it.
So, I think that's a great word today. I think those are great words. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's quit doubting ourselves. Let's goal set. And let's just start with that first step. Let's take that first step. Let's move past that. And if there's any way that Dan or I can help any of you, please message us.
Absolutely.
Hit us up. We'll definitely respond because we want to encourage people. And that's what it's about here.
Yeah.
Dual Coast is about, the mental and physical wellness and how we can inspire you, how we can motivate you, how we can encourage you, because we're right there with you.
Yeah, guys, leave comments on our Instagram, on our YouTube, whatever you guys want to do. We'll get back out to you. Seriously. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, somebody that's going to motivate us, we had Frank Seppi last week.
That's right.
We have Delaney Wallace coming to us next week.
Correct.
And I'm telling you, this guy is amazing. Dan and I, both of us saw him earlier last year.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, he is a motivator. And he's an Olympic power lifter.
Yep.
This guy is a block. Like he's got somebody that makes his own clothes. Okay.
Yes.
So they fit, and so he looks good, right? And when we met him at A to B last year in Stamford, Connecticut, just powerful motivator. And this guy is going to come and he's going to bring it next week. And so I encourage you to next Tuesday to lock on to Dual Coast Podcast and hear Delaney Walls. He is going to encourage you.
He very much is. Yeah, very much is. Guys, Delaney has such a stage presence. It's unbelievable. He was incredible when we saw him in person. He's going to be incredible next week with Dual Coast. Highly encourage you guys to tune in next week to listen to him. He's going to have some great points to go across. We're going to ask him some great questions. Highly encourage you guys to tune in next week for Delaney.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yep. Well, thanks you guys for tuning in and listening to Dan and I.
Yes.
We're excited to be here. And as you know, we're every other week. It's Dan and I just, coming off the cuff.
Correct.
Kind of, but coming off the cuff and, sharing with you guys. But, it's really, really important stuff to us. And we want to share that with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thanks for taking the time to listen to Dual Coast Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in, guys. Check us out on all our YouTube, our Spotify, our Instagram, TikTok. Guys, we're on all handles at Dual Coast Podcast. Give us a listen on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're on iHeartRadio. Check us out.
Awesome. You guys have a great day. Love to hear from you.
Yes, guys, leave comments. Leave comments on Instagram. Leave them on YouTube, wherever you guys want. We'll get back to you. That's awesome. Russ, close it out.
You know what? Wellness is not about perfection. It's about progress.
It's about progress.
So I just encourage you with that. Wellness is not about perfection. It's about progress. Let's all progress this week.
That's right. You guys take care, okay?